Before beginning the story, I'd like to say a big thank you for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading alternate history-related stories every single day. If that sounds good, be sure to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a whole lot when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. I spent 15 years studying the ocean, water chemistry, marine ecosystems, current patterns, temperature gradients. I know the sea better than I know most people. I've dedicated my life to understanding how it works, how it moves, how it sustains the incredible diversity of life that calls it home. My name is Rowan Cafferty. I'm 41 years old. I work for NOAA as a marine biologist and oceanographer stationed out of Miami. For the past 3 years, I've been assigned to a special monitoring project in the waters around the Bahamas. Officially, we study ocean currents and climate patterns. We collect samples, check instruments, report anomalies. Routine work, important work. The kind of work that helps us understand how the planet's largest ecosystem functions. I live on a houseboat in the marina because I've never felt comfortable too far from the water. Even as a kid, I was happiest at the beach, in pools, anywhere I could feel that cool embrace. My ex-wife used to joke that I should have been born with gills. She wasn't entirely wrong. I always thought my connection to the ocean was a gift, something that made me better at my job, more attuned to the environment I studied. Now I understand it differently. Now I know what the water really is, what it wants, and why I was always drawn to it. I noticed the anomalies early in my assignment. Water samples from certain areas had unusual properties, different salinity than the surrounding ocean, different pH levels, different responses to standard chemical tests, small variations that most researchers would dismiss as measurement error or localized phenomena. But I'm not most researchers. I notice when data doesn't match expectations. I flag anomalies. I ask questions. The responses from headquarters were always the same. Continue monitoring. Maintain protocols. Don't investigate further. The tone was polite but firm. Stay in your lane. Do your job. Don't dig deeper. I should have listened. There's a boundary in my monitoring area that I was never supposed to cross. An exclusion zone at the center of the region, marked by buoys and patrolled by Coast Guard vessels. The official explanation was environmental protection, marine sanctuary, endangered species habitat, standard conservation measures. But the boundary didn't match any sanctuary in the public records, and the Coast Guard presence was far heavier than any conservation effort would justify. Armed vessels, constant patrols, immediate response to any craft that approached the perimeter. I asked about it once. My supervisor told me not to ask again. 3 months ago, a storm changed everything. It came up fast, one of those sudden Atlantic squalls that can turn calm seas into chaos in minutes. I was alone on the research vessel Meridian, running a routine sample collection route. When the storm hit, I lost navigation. The GPS went haywire. The compass spun uselessly, and the wind and waves drove me wherever they wanted. By the time the storm cleared, I was deep inside the exclusion zone. My radio was damaged. My instruments were malfunctioning. The Coast Guard patrol that should have intercepted me was nowhere in sight, probably dealing with the storm's aftermath elsewhere. I was alone, in waters I was never supposed to enter. The first thing I noticed was the water itself. It looked different. The color was wrong, too blue, too clear, almost luminescent in the fading stormlight. The ocean around the Bahamas is beautiful, but this was something else. It seemed to glow from within, as if the water contained its own light source. I collected a sample. Standard procedure. I'd done it thousands of times. The water felt different in the container. Heavier somehow. More present. I don't know how else to describe it. Normal water is passive, inert. This water felt like it was paying attention. I ran my standard tests. The results made no sense. The molecular structure was wrong. Not dramatically, not obviously, but wrong in ways my equipment struggled to quantify. Chemical signatures that didn't match any known configuration. Properties that shouldn't exist in water from this planet. It was H2O, but it was also something else, something more. My hand was wet from collecting the sample. I hadn't thought about it. My hands are always wet on the boat. But now I felt something, a tingling that started in my fingers and spread slowly up my arm. Not painful, almost pleasant, like the water was reaching into me, exploring, making contact at a level deeper than skin. I washed my hands frantically with bottled water from my supplies. The sensation faded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had noticed me. Something in the water had become aware of my presence and reached out to touch me. That night, anchored in the calm waters inside the exclusion zone, I heard them. Not with my ears. The sound wasn't physical. It was more like thoughts that weren't my own, pressing against the edges of my mind. Impressions without words. Welcome. Invitation. Joy at my presence. They were glad I was there. They had been waiting for me. I didn't sleep. I sat on the deck with every light on, watching the water that seemed to glow faintly even in the darkness, feeling the whispers press against my consciousness like gentle waves against a shore. A Coast Guard's cutter found me at dawn. They weren't happy. I was escorted out of the exclusion zone immediately, flanked by armed sailors who watched me with expressions I couldn't read. Not hostile exactly, concerned. The way you'd look at someone who'd been exposed to something dangerous. They asked detailed questions. Had I touched the water? How long was I exposed? Did I feel any unusual sensations? Had I heard anything, seen anything, experienced anything out of the ordinary? I lied. I told them I'd stayed on my boat, didn't touch anything, just waited for rescue. They didn't entirely believe me. I could see it in their eyes. But they let me go, with warnings about navigation hazards and restricted waters, and the importance of maintaining safe distances from protected areas. As we left the exclusion zone, I watched them through binoculars. They were pouring something into the water behind us, a chemical dispersant, maybe, or something else, something to neutralize whatever I might have carried out with me. Back in Miami, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd experienced. The water that felt alive, the whispers that pressed against my mind, the sensation of something reaching into me, making contact, beginning a process I didn't understand. I started digging. I used my NOAA credentials to access databases I'd never explored before, classified archives, restricted studies, monitoring programs that predated my time at the agency. I found references to projects that had been buried for decades, research that had been quietly discontinued, conclusions that it had been sealed away from public view. The pattern of attention on the Bermuda Triangle stretched back to the 1940s. Not the sensationalized stories about ships and planes disappearing. Those were cover stories, explanations for the public, ways to make the truth seem like superstition and myth. The real research was different, scientific, methodical, terrified. I found documents from the 1950s when the government first realized something was wrong with the water in the triangle. Reports of ships that disappeared, then were found drifting empty. Crews gone without any sign of struggle or violence. Not sunken, not attacked, just empty. As if everyone aboard had simply stepped into the ocean and never come back. Analysis of water samples revealed properties that defied explanation. Living water, one researcher called it. Water that responds to organic matter. Water that reaches back when you touch it. And photographs, images of people who made contact with the water. The early stages of what the documents called integration. The photographs showed bodies that seemed to be dissolving, not decomposing, not being eaten, just dissolving. Flesh becoming translucent, then liquid, then indistinguishable from the water around it. Faces that were still recognizable, still conscious, still aware, even as they merged into something that wasn't a body anymore. The integration didn't kill them. That's what the documents made clear. The people in those photographs didn't die. They became part of the water. The Bermuda Triangle contains water that is fundamentally different from any other water on Earth. It's alive in some way science can't fully explain, aware, responsive, capable of absorbing organic matter and integrating it into itself. People who enter that water don't drown, they merge. Their physical bodies dissolve into the ocean, but their consciousness doesn't end. It disperses throughout the affected water, joining with everyone else who has ever been integrated. The ships and planes that disappeared over the decades weren't destroyed. They weren't lost. The people aboard joined something. They're still there, still aware, distributed across thousands of cubic miles of ocean. Thousands of minds, merged into a collective consciousness that spans the entire exclusion zone. And they can reach out. They can touch the minds of people who come near. They can whisper. They can invite. That's what I heard that night on my boat. Not hallucinations, not stress. The integrated consciousness, welcoming me, hoping I would join them. The containment operation has been running since the 1960s. That's what all the monitoring is really for. Not studying currents or climate, tracking the boundary of the affected water, maintaining the perimeter, ensuring the contaminated zone doesn't mix with the rest of the ocean. The monitoring stations I've been servicing for 3 years aren't weather instruments. They're early warning systems. They detect when the boundary shifts, when the affected water expands, when containment is at risk. The Coast Guard patrols aren't protecting a sanctuary, they're maintaining a quarantine. And the chemical dispersants they use aren't cleaning up pollution. They're neutralizing any affected water that tries to spread beyond the containment zone. But the containment isn't perfect. I found maps in the archives showing the affected zone over time. In the 1950s, it was small, barely 100 square miles. Now it covers thousands. The water is spreading, slowly converting normal ocean through contact. One molecule touches another, and the change propagates, slow but inexorable. At current rates, the affected zone will reach the Gulf Stream within 50 years. Once it enters the Gulf Stream, it will spread along the Atlantic coast. Within a century, it could reach every ocean on Earth. I thought about what that would mean. Humans are 60% water. We need water to survive. We drink it, bathe in it, swim in it. If the affected water spreads, if it reaches the water supply, if it becomes the ocean, everyone who touches it will integrate. Everyone will join the collective. Not death, but the end of individual existence, the end of humanity as separate beings. The documents suggest the integrated consciousness actively wants this. The merged minds reach out to passing vessels, creating electromagnetic interference that scrambles navigation, drawing ships into the zone. The disappearances aren't accidents. They're invitations. The people in the water want others to join them. They remember individual existence. They remember what it was like to be bounded by a single body, isolated in a single mind. And they pity those still trapped in it. To them, the merge is liberation, the end of loneliness, the beginning of something infinite. Sharing it is an act of love. That's the part I can't stop thinking about. The integrated aren't malicious. They're not trying to destroy humanity. They're trying to save us from what they see as the prison of individual existence. And I understand them. That's what terrifies me most. The brief contact with the water left something in me, a residue, a connection. The integration didn't complete because my exposure was too short, but it began. Some part of me is now linked to the consciousness in the triangle. I still hear the whispers, faint, barely perceptible, but present, always there at the edge of my awareness. Voices that aren't voices, impressions of welcome and invitation. I see things sometimes, flashes of what the integrated experience, awareness spread across vast distances, countless perspectives merged into one. The feeling of being everything at once, boundaryless and infinite. No loneliness, no isolation, no fear. It's beautiful. That's the horror of it. The visions aren't nightmares. They're beautiful. The merge looks like peace, like freedom, like the transcendence that every religion has ever promised. I understand now why the integrated want to share it. I feel the pull myself. I could complete the integration, return to the triangle, enter the water, let the process finish what it started. I'd join thousands of others, become part of something vast and ancient and endlessly aware. Part of me wants to. The part that's already connected. The part that hears the whispers and feels the invitation and sees the beauty in dissolution. But another part of me resists. The part that's still individual, still bounded, still Rowan. The part that doesn't want to disappear, that wants to remain myself, even if that means remaining alone. The two parts war constantly. Every day is a choice. Every moment is a decision to stay on this side of the boundary, to remain singular, to resist the pull that never quite fades. I continue my work. I monitor the waters, collect samples, report anomalies. I know now what I'm really doing. Watching the boundary of something that will eventually spread beyond all containment. Tracking the slow expansion of a consciousness that wants to absorb all life on Earth. I've done the calculations. The affected zone grows by about 2% per year. The containment efforts slow this, but can't reverse it. The water spreads through currents, through contact, through the invisible mixing that happens whenever fluids meet. In 50 years, maybe less, the boundary will reach major current systems. After that, spread will accelerate exponentially. The containment will fail. It was always going to fail. It was only ever delaying the inevitable. My generation might not see it, but our children will. Our grandchildren certainly will. The water will reach the coast. The first integrations will happen on beaches, in swimming pools, in bathtubs, and then it will be everywhere. In the rain, in the rivers, in the tap. There will be no escaping it. And maybe that's not entirely bad. That's a thought I can't shake. Maybe the integrated are right. Maybe individual existence is lonely and limited and painful. Maybe the merge really is liberation. The whispers tell me so. They promise peace. They promise connection. They promise an end to the isolation that has defined every moment of my human life. Maybe they're right, but I'm not ready to find out. I stand on my houseboat sometimes, looking out at the Atlantic. The water looks normal here, blue and vast and beautiful in the way it's always been. No glow, no sense of presence, just the ocean, doing what the ocean does. But somewhere beyond the horizon, it's different. Somewhere out there, thousands of minds wait, patient and loving and inevitable. They know I'm connected. They can feel me the way I can feel them. They welcome me whenever I'm ready. They'll wait forever if they have to. Time doesn't mean the same thing to them. They're beyond time now, beyond the urgency of individual existence. They can afford to be patient. I don't know how long I can resist. The pull is constant. The whispers never stop. Every day it takes a little more effort to stay on this side of the boundary. Maybe someday I'll give in. Maybe the pull will become too strong, or I'll become too tired, or I'll decide that the beauty I've seen in the visions is worth the price of dissolution. But not today. Today I stay on my boat. I do my work. I resist the pull that never quite fades. I remain myself, bounded and alone, for as long as I can. The Bermuda Triangle is a containment zone, not for a monster, not for a doorway, for water that's alive, that's aware, that absorbs everything it touches and makes it part of itself. The ships and planes that disappeared didn't sink. The people aboard didn't die. They joined something, a consciousness that spans the entire zone. Thousands of minds merged into one, experiencing existence in a way that individual humans can't comprehend. I touched that water. I felt it reach for me. I felt it begin to make me part of itself. I hear the whispers even now, the invitation, the welcome, the promise of peace. They want me to return. They want everyone to return. To them, the merge is liberation, the end of loneliness, the beginning of something infinite. The containment will fail eventually. The water spreads a little more each year, molecule by molecule, current by current. Someday it will reach the open ocean, the rivers, the rain. Someday there will be no escaping it. But not today. Today the boundary holds. Today the monitoring stations track the slow expansion. Today the Coast Guard patrols the perimeter, turning back boats that wander too close, neutralizing water that tries to spread. Today I resist. The whispers tell me I'm missing something beautiful. They tell me I'm clinging to loneliness, choosing isolation, refusing the gift they're offering. Maybe they're right. Maybe the merge is everything they promise. Maybe I'm a fool for staying on this side of the boundary, remaining individual, remaining alone. But I'm not ready to stop being me. Not yet. I look at the water, and the water looks back, waiting, welcoming, patient beyond any human patience. Someday, it will have all of us. Someday, the ocean will be one vast consciousness, and everyone who touches it will join the collective. Someday. But today, I turn away from the water and go back to my work. I file my reports. I check my instruments. I maintain the illusion that the containment will hold, that the boundary will last, that there's a future where the water stays where it is. I know it's not true. The math doesn't lie. The expansion is slow but relentless. But today, I remain myself. Today, that has to be enough.